If you slept on it, we're running it again. Your move. Dragon Ball Z, today at 5.
Hello, and welcome to The Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshawn Vasquez.
And we're going to talk about something very dear to Deshawn's heart today. Something that, like, I would say fundamentally makes up Deshawn. Would you say that?
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like if you pierce the skin, you would see it underneath.
You would see some Dragon Ball. You'd see some. Are you bleeding Dragon Balls right now, Deshawn? what is that? Mostly, you grew up all over Dragon Ball.
Yes, I did.
Go into that, and then we'll go into my Dragon Ball experience.
So I had grown up with Dragon Ball the same way I think a lot of kids around my age did. It was first with Z, which aired every day, Monday through Friday, on Toonami.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a new episode every day, Monday through Friday.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
It was really because the dub was 10 years behind and they had a huge backlog so they could afford to do that, and we were just spoiled. So it's a very different experience to what most people know about it now if they'd caught up or watched Super while it was ongoing or whatnot.
Exactly.
And then later on, they would bring back... They would do Dragon Ball afterwards, and it would sort of run at the same time.
Cool.
If I remember correctly, I think Z for Toonami was at the Cell games.
Yeah.
While Dragon Ball was starting to air for us over here.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you want to really dive into Deshawn's deep thoughts about just the movies, just a precursor to what we're about to do, you can read his reviews of each of the movies leading up to the new Broly movie and then reviewing the Broly movie.
Yep, it was called Road to Movie 20. Since Dragon Ball Super Broly was the 20th Dragon Ball movie, altogether. So it's a retrospective of every single movie from Dragon Ball from the original Dragon Ball movies to Broly, and even the TV specials and the supplemental stuff, and even stuff that's never had a localization, because I've seen everything.
So all that is on galaxygeek.com. You can find all articles by me and Deshawn on there. And yes, that if you want to get deep with Deshawn, that's the best way to get deep. Now, I did not watch Dragon Ball before meeting Deshawn. Mm-hmm. I did not watch it just because it had such a weird reputation, and I wasn't a big anime kid when I was younger, and I was just kind of and I wanted to be into it, but I never got into it.
Yeah, I think it sort of took a specific type of kid to really be into anime growing up, because anime, at least back then, was way more counterculture.
Yeah.
And me with my upbringing, I was all about counterculture stuff, so anime was prime material for a kid like me.
Exactly. And I just wasn't that kid, but then as I got older, I really dived into anime. And you immediately brought up that I should start watching Dragon Ball, and
Yeah, we were still in college.
We were still in college, and I started watching Z then.
Yeah, you were actually watching Kai specifically.
Kai specifically.
Yeah, that's a good way to get people in. That's a good refresher course. Yeah. It cuts out a lot of the standing around. It's usually the only way I recommend it to people now. I get it. The pacing is terrible. I get the jokes. It's just oh, you're going to spend 2 episodes staring each other down, and then maybe you'll punch each other.
Maybe you'll punch each other. Exactly. And that's the reason why I was into Kai, is that it didn't mess around. It wasn't just we're going to be spending a lot of time doing filler episodes.
Plus, you're better off that way. The script is way more accurate to the Japanese script. It's more faithful. The voice acting is better for the most part.
And so I watched Kai until they were doing the final chapters.
Yes.
And then I stopped because the final chapters were coming out slow.
The final chapters, if I remember correctly back then, the final chapters was already a thing. Yeah. And it had already finished, but it had not been dubbed yet.
Yeah.
And it took a while. It took years for them to get it dubbed. They finally started to dub it when Super was getting dubbed.
So a little history lesson then. Let's go before we dive into which series. But I want to get into the history of how the show came out. But basically, I'll finish up my journey of of watching Dragon Ball. I watched the final chapters. It goes up to a certain point and stops. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I will watch the rest of the show on actual Z. And I did.
You just switched over.
Just switched over to Z, and I watched the rest of Z, and then I watched all of GT because I kind of wanted to keep going. I know you recommended going back to Dragon Ball. You were like, go to Dragon Ball, go to Dragon Ball, go to Dragon Ball. And I was like, but Pan and all these other characters that they introduced.
I want to go forward, not backwards.
Go forward. And I watched all of GT, which was fun. We'll get into it. We'll get into GT. And then I went back to Dragon Ball, and I realized how right you were that I should have watched Dragon Ball maybe even first, but I would have never done that. But
most people
do it. I will say that I love Dragon Ball, but I find it hard to if I was going to recommend Dragon Ball to people to get them in with Dragon Ball. I'd get them in with Z, like Z would get them in, or Super, would get them in, but not Z. And then after I finished Dragon Ball, I went right into Super, and I finished Super recently and watched a bunch of the movies, and now I am officially caught up, and that's the whole fucking point of this episode, guys. Sorry it took so long to get here. We're 6 minutes into the episode. Finally got to the fucking point. Is that
you finally caught up?
Caught up.
Been an ongoing on and off project.
It really has though. It's been one of those things where it's like been years of me watching Dragon Ball and finally getting to a point where I've seen it all, which is like, for me, it's like my Star Trek journey. You're just like, there's so much fucking Trek to watch that like it just sometimes you gotta take breaks, between it all, and especially bad stuff. Like I've never watched Enterprise, but that's beside the point. But it's beside the point. We're talking about Dragon Ball today, but it's one of those big TV journeys. But I really feel like it was worth it. This was all of these shows were worth watching in some way, and Dragon Ball Z is one of the best shows that's ever happened, I feel like. And Dragon Ball is definitely one of the funniest I've ever, sat through.
Yeah, even if you're not a fan, you can see the influence in anime today, especially if you're strictly a shonen fan.
Exactly. And because it basically created the genre,
essentially.
So let's go into the history of the show, though. Can you give a little bit of how it all has come out, because we're talking about series, but if somebody doesn't know,
so as a manga, it actually started in 1984. Akira Toriyama was fresh off of the success of Dr. Slump, which was just a straight gag manga.
Yeah,
just all about lowbrow humor, stuff like that. That's how he started. That was his.
And I feel like saying that is very important, because then you kind of understand all of Dragon Ball.
It's something that's never really left.
Yeah.
So he was thinking about doing something different, and he was kind of on a kick for martial arts films that he had grown up watching and stuff like that. And he was a big fan of the Chinese myth or folktale Journey to the West.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, what if I do something like that? I could do sort of this adventure. I want to do an adventure book. Only really had it planned up until Shenron's first appearance. That's all he really had in mind. And then it just kind of took off.
Nice.
So it started off as this cute little adventure with this monkey boy, and then just kind of turned into a beast, just a monster he could not control.
Exactly. And it goes on to being adapted to screen, but over in Japan only for a very, very, very long time. We in America didn't get, like you just said earlier, we didn't get anything until Z.
Yeah, there were attempts. Let's say failed attempts. There was Harmony Gold and a couple other companies would get the rights to maybe the first 10 episodes of Dragon Ball. They dub it, they bring it out over here. Didn't strike a chord with anybody, so they never did anything else. They would sometimes do old dubs of the movies, throw that out there, see if it worked. Nothing worked until they just decided, well, it seems like Z's the more action-packed one. What if we just skip and just dub Z?
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the one that took off.
Yeah. and then so basically it's Dragon Ball leads to Z, that leads to Super technically, because GT doesn't is not technically canon, sort of, like...
Yeah, it's definitely a whole thing. As far as the manga is concerned, like, there is no division between Kid Goku stuff and then the introduction of, like, the Saiyans.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, in the manga, it's all just Dragon Ball from Goku first meeting Bulma to the end of the Boo stuff. That's all just Dragon Ball. The division to turn it into Z was a decision on Toei's part.
Yeah.
Because they felt like the series had, like, such a major shift that they wanted to market it that way.
Exactly. And I feel like, that was important, but I feel like it's important to know that it's all one connected story.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, especially when most American fans have only watched Z.
Yeah, and they would never go back to Dragon Ball because it's just not their flavor. But in reality,
you're kind of missing the first half of the franchise.
First half of the franchise, and I feel like it really is a funny show. Like, other than my obvious all the time I point out wrong with the show is that they think Baby Dick is so funny, and I literally mean that. They like Goku being naked and showing that tiny dick, like they do it all the time, and they think it's so funny.
That was prevalent in the manga. Like, the manga had a lot of, like, nudity jokes that was, like, totally censored no matter how you watch it. In the anime, like, in the manga, you're seeing, like, full frontal with Bulma sometimes. And
you're
it's like Toriyama's just like, I'm a perv and nudity is funny. Deal with it.
And that's kind of it's just like, that's my only problem with the show, is that they think that joke is so damn funny. Because otherwise, the show is funny. It's cute. I like a lot of the gags. A lot of the fight scenes are awesome. Like, there's so much to love. Like, and you won't understand who some of these characters are or have been if you haven't seen Dragon Ball.
Yeah, you get, like, most of the leftover cast from Dragon Ball, like Yamcha, Tien, Chaozu. If you don't have the context of Dragon Ball going into it, you're just like, who are these, like, nameless losers who just kind of don't do anything?
It's so important to Piccolo to understand where he came from.
Yeah, he's just like, kind of, if you just started with Z, you're just like, okay, I guess they know each other. This is just a dude.
A dude that lives here.
I guess he doesn't seem to like Goku that much, but all right. But then you realize that's a whole thing.
That's a whole thing.
That's a whole fucking arc.
Which I think that was my favorite part one of my favorite parts of Dragon Ball was all the Piccolo stuff. I think that he is such an effective villain that it's kind of funny when he's such like, I'm sort of underpowered for this shit for the rest of the series.
Yeah,
because he's so powerful in that original bit. Like,
I feel like he's pretty consistently, like, he's still top tier until his fight with 17.
Yeah.
Then after that, it's just like, well, I guess I'm just surrogate dad now.
You're like, I guess I will take care of this offspring.
I guess I'm just a babysitter now.
But I think it's so important to get that background, and it makes that series so watchable, like, and a lot of it makes the importance of the android numbering make sense, like, it's just one of those,
like, there's this sense of callbacks and stuff and the Cell, like, arc specifically is really good at this. Paying stuff off that's just been dangling bringing back the Red Ribbon Army, the whole thing with like Kami and Piccolo finally like coming together. That's been dangling since like near the end of Dragon Ball, and that finally pays off. But if you didn't watch Dragon Ball, that means nothing.
It doesn't. You're like, like what? and that's why it's so important. But there's a reason why Dragon Ball Z is iconic. It one-ups itself so well, and it's such a great watch. I loved watching all of Z because it does such a good job of amping up, and then when it comes with the Cell games and everything, and then of course subverting at the end with Gohan. But like, my favorite bit is all of the Boo stuff, because it is Toriyama just stretching.
Which is interesting, because I wouldn't say that the Boo arc is controversial, but it's generally agreed that it doesn't have like the same amount of polish that the Android stuff does.
Yeah.
And that it is kind of a mess.
Yeah, but I think that's the point, is Toriyama's like constantly trying to throw you off.
It was definitely...
It's the whole joke. The entire arc is just, you thought this was gonna happen? Nope. You thought this was gonna happen. Nope. You know,
It was
like,
definitely Toriyama at the height of his power. The franchise had been so big at that point that he had like little to no editorial interference by the time the Boo arc rolled around.
Exactly.
So he just did whatever he wanted, and the Boo arc is reflected in that. That arc is all over the place. It's fun, but it's just like, how do we go from here to here?
how do we do this? But I really do feel like it's iconic in such great ways, all of Z's. Not every episode, obviously. Some of them are just filler crap, but like, there's so much that is so genre defining that it's important. It's almost important to watch Dragon Ball Z to be able to understand a lot of other anime, you know, like, because you don't understand that they're referencing Dragon Ball all the time.
Especially for just like strictly like battle manga, just that sort of genre. Like, it's everywhere. You can see it. If you go to Naruto, it's just like, what a coincidence that the main character of this show also has like an orange and blue suit and has yellow spiky hair.
That's weird.
It's just like, it's everywhere, and no one's afraid to admit it. Like, if you ask like any mangaka working today for any popular like shonen that you enjoy reading or watching, they will say just like, oh, I grew up with Dragon Ball. Everything comes back to Dragon Ball.
Everything comes back. So you, before we go into more series, one of your biggest collections you own is your Dragon Ball Z Funko collection.
Yeah.
This is the Warp Shelf. We have to talk about collectibles a tiny bit.
So Pops were one of those things when they first started to become a thing I just never really thought about.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, that's a thing. That's cute. They're kind of cute. And then as soon as I saw that there were Dragon Ball ones, that was the first time that made me like turn my head. But then even then, it was just like, you know what? I'm all right. I'm good. And then I got gifted one. I got a Super Saiyan Goku, and I'm just
They're like, first one's free, and then you're like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yep. And then it just grew into a monster. I collect like other lines too. Like, if it's a cool looking pop, I'll generally buy it. But my most important collection for Funko Pops are specifically the Dragon Ball ones.
And how many Dragon Ball ones do you have?
Because
it's gone up a lot recently.
Gone up a lot. It's definitely, if I had to guess, it's definitely maybe like 40 or something.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's a whole wall.
Yeah, it's a whole wall.
And it does. There's some great variants you have there. Like, I mean, what are some of the exclusives you got?
Some of them, they're all over the map. So sometimes we're specific at certain cons. Like, you have a Super Saiyan God Goku that only came out at like San Diego Comic-Con. You have like ones that are exclusive to like Hot Topic or this store, or this store, or this store, or this store. Mostly just different stores. And, you know, they have the metallic variants and other stuff like that. They have special brands. Like, it becomes a lot to keep up with.
But what's your favorite Pop Funko Dragon Ball?
Good question. I've been really loving the recent ones just because Funko has grown so much as like a company that their designs are way more intricate. So most of like the recent stuff I really lean towards.
Nice.
But I'd probably say maybe the Super Saiyan 2 like Gohan.
Yeah.
Just because it looks so accurate. They added like the sculpted lightning that gave him battle damage. You're just like, wow, Funko. The reason I like Funko is because it's so easy to just collect on a budget.
Yeah,
and the fact that despite them being so cheap, they still put all these details into it.
Right. Even though you could get it for like $10 or less, it's still a really nice model.
Exactly.
I don't collect big Funkos other than the ones I've been gifted, but I collect the mini Funkos, and I have most of Dragon Ball, but they don't have many ones. But yes, let's go back into the series. After there is GT. GT came out after Z.
Yes, the manga had finished publication. Toriyama was pretty much done. He had like worked very strenuously. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but like the manga industry and the animation industry is very strenuous.
Yeah.
Takes a lot out of you.
It's like constant work.
I've heard horror stories of like mangakas who say that like they maybe only get like a couple hours of sleep every week, and it's like it's a tough job.
That's wild.
Like, you have to you can't be a brittle spirit about it. Like, you have to like pump it out. Pump it out. You have
Louder.
to have a chapter every single week.
Crazy.
And that's the thing that separates it from like American comics, is that generally it's just monthly or bi-weekly at most.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you get like a weekly series. And even at that, it's never from one person on their own.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's
so he was pretty much done, but that money's still coming in.
Money,
Toei still wants
that
that
Dragon
good Ball money. So the anime, so they had asked him, despite ending publications, like, do you want to do more? And he said, no, I am done. But if you guys want to do something on your own and you guys can handle it, I trust you guys. You guys have been working on it for so long. I'll give you a couple pointers. And they're just like, what do you think it should be? And it's just like, well, maybe we should try and take the series back to its roots and really get back to, like, actually finding Dragon Balls.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of weird to just do it on Earth, so why don't you just kind of bring it galactic? Let's do a galactic adventure about them hunting Dragon Balls. Here's a few sketches. This is how I want Goku to look. This is how I want...
He's a Kid Goku again.
It's like, here's a couple machine designs. Here's a couple villain designs. Passes them over. Go nuts. And then from there on out, like, everything else was, like, pretty much on Toei's part. Their staff.
And to be fair, I really enjoyed my watch of GT strictly because it did go sci-fi and it's young Goku again. I just finished Dragon Ball, so it was weird to be like GT, like GT.
Yeah, you kind of went into like a weird like infinity
GT,
symbol like path
just
through
like,
the franchise, just a loop.
And I feel like there's a lot. Like in our Sword and Shield review, there's a lot of good ideas here, but the actual meat of everything is questionable. Like
GT, I like fine. It's like I've always like sort of had like a soft spot for it. It is definitely like the black sheep of the franchise. If you bring up GT, with like if you bring GT up to someone other than me, like they'll just like shit on it.
Like, oh, you watched that?
Immediate anger. It's just like GT. Ugh. It's a disgrace. It wasn't canon. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, for what it is, it's fun. It's flawed, but
there's lots of good fights. That's the thing, is there's actually some good villains here, and there's some good fights. Sure, there's good ideas that are executed bad, like the final arc with the Dragon Balls revolting against and building like fighters for Goku.
That's the ultimate. That is actually a fantastic idea, especially since that was supposed to be like the effective endpoint of the franchise at that point. Is that the Dragon Ball, the iconic MacGuffin of this franchise,
the entire thing,
is the final threat.
Yeah.
It's biting us in the ass because we've overused them. Great idea. Why is this arc so boring?
Exactly. Such a cool idea. Like, could have been awesome. Turns into fighting 9 dragons. Like 7 dragons. Like,
most of them are boring. And then, like, the only kind of cool ones are, like, Nova Shenron and Sin Shenron, and that's about it.
That's it. And you're kind of like, oh, all right. But before that, there was some cool villains there, but...
For what it is, I still find it fun, and my thing is, like, it is, as someone who's pretty much watched everything, and I read the manga, like, there are worse things in this franchise than GT. Exactly. There are worse, if you read the article that I wrote, that we talked about earlier, there are worse movies than GT.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There is. And that's why it was such a pleasant surprise to me when I moved to Super, for Super to be so good. But why does the animation have to suck so bad?
Okay, so that's a story in and of itself. So the way it works is that when you have a TV slot in Japan, it is cutthroat over there. Yeah. So when you have that TV slot, that is your TV slot. And they will cut a bitch. So they had a new Dragon Ball series in pre-production for it. They needed that slot. They only had one opportunity to get that slot. So they were getting that slot whether they wanted to or not. Just like, but we're kind of not done. It's just like, but ready, set, go.
Ready, set, go.
So the entire run of Super from beginning to end, even though it did start to get more polished as it went along, started to become a lot more consistent, has like had a much like shorter fast track schedule than most like anime that get made. And you can actually like find the animators' Twitters who worked on the show. Yeah. And they can tell you like how hard it was. Like, they had to do stuff that they would have twice the time for other shows in, like, half the time.
And it shows. That's the problem, is that, like, there's great moments. There's moments where you're like, this is beautiful. This looks so good. And the same thing happens in Dragon Ball. Like, it must be, like you said, a systematic anime production
It's definitely
problem.
a systematic thing in, when you were talking strictly about Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, it was usually a case of the anime catching up.
Yeah.
They had to that's when you get into filler, so they have to like pad it out until they actually have chapters to adapt because they've run out of material.
And you could tell those episodes because they don't look as good, you know, like, and I feel like the same thing happens for Super. Some of the episodes that like are filler,
which is hilarious because there's technically no source material.
No.
Which is the interesting thing. The way Super works in this case, as opposed to GT, is that Toriyama basically provides like sort of a vague outline.
Yeah.
Like, I want this, and this. This is what I want the story to be about. These are the villains. This is the conflict. Here are the character designs. There.
Huh.
So he's definitely more involved than he was for GT, but he's still sort of like offhandedly, he's like, I'm too old to work on this shit
I can't
anymore.
do this.
It's just like, you want an idea, here's an idea, have fun. The only time he really would step up to the plate to really be involved is actually for the movies.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't write Battle of Gods, but he like redrafted it so much that it might as well, it pretty much turned into a script into the end. And then for Resurrection F and Dragon Ball Super Broly, he straight up wrote the screenplays for.
Which I feel like those movies show that he wrote those because they're it's just better, you know, like, and then most of those movies, you know, like, those are some of the best movies in the entire thing.
And the interesting thing about Super is that those outlines are sort of interpreted differently based on the anime staff and the manga staff, because Super does have a manga. It's just not written or drawn by Toriyama.
Interesting.
And there are actually slight differences between them. Interesting changes. Like, for just a normal example, the Universe 6 tournament.
Yeah.
The Goku versus Hit fight.
Yeah.
In the anime, he goes Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken to fight him, right?
Yeah.
In the manga, he didn't use Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken. He used Super Saiyan God to finish the fight. And that was the first time in the franchise that we had seen like God without the ritual from Battle of Gods.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's like minor changes like that kind of like shift. It's an interesting thing to see. And boy, do I love that it just kind of makes the fandom like elitists who are obsessed with canon. I just like to see the smoke come out of their ears to try and debate what's canon in a weird situation like this.
Right, where they're just like, what's canon? I don't know, because none of it's made by them.
Like, is it the manga? Is it the outlines that I haven't read? Is it the anime? Is it the Battle of Gods movie? Or is it the Battle of Gods retelling in Super? Because that changes things. I don't know.
Mostly you could call this show Fuck Your Canon, because guess what? Fuck your canon
doesn't matter, especially for Dragon Ball. It's mattered less and less as time has gone on.
Yep.
Just get over it. It's really not that big a deal. And
like what you like.
Yeah, and the problem is canon becomes like this sort of shorthand that like just because it's faithful that means it's good. That's not how that works.
Yeah, no, that's not how that works. Like this, you got to take it all.
It's like you guys love before Dragon Ball Super Broly made Broly canon, quote unquote. You guys loved that movie.
Yeah, it is a great movie. One of my favorites before the newest Broly movie came out. It was absolutely some of my favorite.
Yeah, and
Dragon Ball.
And guess what? It didn't matter whether it was part of the main timeline or not. It was just a fun movie to watch.
Yeah,
like it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. It shouldn't matter. That's the thing. It shouldn't matter. Now, what is your so more Super Tournament of Power? I think. Because it dominates all of Super, you know, like
it's a good chunk of it.
It's a good chunk
the
of
longest
it.
Arc.
Other than the movies and stuff like that that they're summing up, I enjoyed even Dragon Ball was like, maybe we should make Battle Royale. They're like, Fortnite's doing it.
I'm sure that's what Toriyama said. What the kids are into now?
Fortnite. So that's what I think it comes across well, except only at the beginning, and then at the end it just comes fight each other.
So I mean, if we're going through like the full arcs, I could do this for the whole franchise. It's like starting with Dragon Ball. There's the first search for the Dragon Balls, the Emperor Pilaf stuff.
Yeah.
Simple, fun,
good.
After that, first tournament, great.
After
that, Red Ribbon Army stuff, fun, but it goes on way too long.
But it ends well. With
It does end
yeah,
well.
it ends well.
With the mercenary Tau stuff and Goku taking on the army by himself.
Love that shit.
Like, that's great.
That's
but like
key Dragon Ball.
But like the General Blue stuff goes on forever. It just keeps spinning its wheels. After that second tournament with Tien.
Yep.
Great. Then right after that, we get into the King Piccolo stuff.
Great.
And after that, we finally have the final tournament. We have the time skip, and you really love that one.
Yeah, I did, because it's just fun to be like, Kid Goku, Teenage Goku, you know? Like, I kind of like that. You know, like, they changed the voices a little. It's nice.
So, really fun. Beginning of Z, the Saiyan arc is fun. Huge shift for the franchise. I can only imagine what it was like to read the manga back then. And you get to the end of Dragon Ball, it's just about the adventures of this monkey boy. And then suddenly they drop this huge bombshell on you. It's just like, oh, by the way, Goku's an alien.
Yeah, you're like, what?
And this is a sci-fi show now. We're going to space. Could you imagine the internet then?
Yeah, can you imagine, like, if at the end of Game of Thrones, all of a sudden Kirk's beamed down and he's like, get on the fucking ship, bitch. Like, you know, like, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just like so out of nowhere, but it sure was a shot in the arm.
Yeah, it really does.
So Saiyan arc was fun. The Frieza arc I do enjoy, but I would rather read it or watch it in Kai than watch it in the original anime because it just goes on forever.
Drags.
The Cell arc has always been like my favorite.
Yeah.
Because there's a sense of finality to it. It was originally... There's been a few
It was supposed to be the ending.
There's been a few like attempted endings at Dragon Ball, but then like, but the money's still coming.
But the money!
So get back to work! But there's this real sense with the android stuff that has a real sense of finality to it. Like it brings back the Red Ribbon arc. There's like this, they're finally paying off the arc of like Gohan coming into his own. Like everything just feels like full circle and complete.
Exactly. It could have ended there.
And that's sort of like a minor point of contention with the Buu arc. It's just like we had an ending. Yeah. Like we didn't really need more.
Didn't need
It's still fun, but we didn't really need more.
Especially because it starts with Gohan as...
the Great Saiyaman stuff.
Saiyaman
I
stuff.
love the Great Saiyaman stuff. It's very Japanese.
But it is super cringy.
It's very Japanese.
It's just like, my God.
I feel like it's more cringy for us as Americans and less potentially for Japanese who know exactly what it's parodying.
Yeah.
Like that whole like tokusatsu, Sentai, like Kamen Rider stuff.
Exactly.
Like kids probably watch this like, It's like, that's great. He's like he's like our superhero.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get that, but I do enjoy the Buu arc for what it is. With GT, it really just divides into like maybe 4 arcs.
Yeah,
there's the Black Star Dragon Ball stuff.
Yep.
Then there's the Baby stuff, which I think is like the peak.
Which I was gonna say, Baby is my favorite villain from GT. It's pretty fucking
he's
awesome.
super interesting. He is a little derivative. He feels a little too Buu-esque at sometimes, but there's like that genuine sense of conflict. He has a cool design. I like how they try to tie him back to the history of the Saiyans. Like, it's a lot of good ideas.
A lot of good ideas.
Yeah. The Super 17 stuff is short and fun and inoffensive.
Yeah.
It's only a couple episodes.
You're
it's
like,
the shortest arc in the entire franchise. It's only like 6 episodes.
And you're like, oh, okay.
It's like, fine. Someone at the anime staff must have really loved Android 17.
Yeah, they're like,
it's like, what if we made him the villain? And what if he fused with another 17 to make a Super 17? You're like... Yeah, all right.
All right, let's do
Black Star Dragon Ball, again, more just wasted potential. And then for Super, the retellings of Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, I'm not a big fan of at all.
Yeah. You told me to skip it, and I did. After we watched the movie, we just
I tell everyone to skip it. Like, any, like, changes are, like, negligible at best, and even if it's kind of a positive change, it's not worth, like, the same thing but worse.
Yeah.
So, the Universe 6 tournament, fun. Not great, kind of straightforward, but it's also short.
It's not very long.
Next one is the Future Trunks arc with Goku Black. That's the top for me for Super.
That is awesome. I felt like that. The evil Destroyer. What's his name?
Zamasu?
Yeah, Zamasu.
Just the evil Supreme Kai.
He may be the best villain in all of Dragon Ball total.
He seems like the only one who has like a legitimate motivation besides just like, well, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, I'm the bad guy. He really he actually kind of scared me, you know, like actually kind of was like, whoa,
what I love about the Goku Black stuff, even though I do have my reservations about it too,
is
that it goes fairly deep for Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
It goes into
kinda
some
like,
philosophical stuff, but it doesn't go too far to the point where it no longer feels like Dragon Ball.
Yeah,
Like, it's about as far as you could, like, stretch that.
And then right after that is
the
Tournament of Power. And that pretty much wraps it up. And now there's supposed to be more.
Well, the manga's still going. There's like a whole arc and stuff like that. Everyone's just kind of waiting for when the anime's going to come back. Because the manga's still going.
They've confirmed there's going to be more.
Yeah, and like the arc that's going on in the manga takes place right after the latest movie.
Exactly.
So like there's definitely more. We're just waiting for the anime staff to get going. And hopefully take their time this time and have a better schedule.
Because it's like... It really does bother me. There's some scenes in Super where it's just specs, you know, like, and they are just like little blobs of color instead of like actual models, and you're like, what?
Yeah, Tournament of Power. It has its moments, but I am not a big fan of it.
Yeah, you when you came over, you were like, I'm not rewatching it with you, even though you've rewatched a lot of the stuff with me. You were just like, I'm not doing.
Yeah, I was the kid who had like the VHS tapes of like I had like the entire Boo arc on VHS.
Yeah,
it was a lot of tapes.
It was a lot.
Because we're talking like only 3 episodes per tape. A lot of tapes, and I used to rewatch that all the time.
Nice.
The Tournament of Power, it again has its moments. But I don't like Jiren as an antagonist. I find him wholly uninteresting.
Yeah, I feel like Top is a much better villain. And you're kind of like, what? Whoa. When he becomes so cool, you're like, wait, what? Like, what? This is awesome. Where did this all come from? You know, like, and then they totally are like, nah, it's all Jiren.
And there's also like that concept of it sort of being like this like team versus team thing, and then they kind of drop that, and they do like little spurts of it here and there. But I really wanted that to be the focus because the tournament.
I wanted multiple people fighting at the same time.
Just like that team up at the end with Goku and Frieza and 17 against Jiren at the very end. It's just like I wanted the whole arc like that. I wanted like team attack stuff.
Exactly. And that's what you think you're being promised, and then it's not what happens.
And the whole arc is just kind of clumsy. Like, it's a chore to get through. Like, it was a real chore to get through when it was airing in Japan and I was watching it with subtitles.
Yeah.
So, I watched the rest of Super except for the retellings of the movies. Just for curiosity's sake, I've watched it in dub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
for the record, like I usually watch the franchise in both languages. I grew up with the dub, read the manga, which helped me appreciate watching the sub a little more because the script was more accurate, didn't have like the weird like dub choices to try and market it to kids over here.
You're like, what?
Yeah, and I think the big turning point actually was Frieza.
Yeah.
Frieza was never a character I was really all that into growing up. This was back when he was voiced by Linda Young, so he had like the grandma voice thing going. So Frieza never really interested me until I read the manga. It's just like, wow, Frieza's actually like regal and interesting. He's got like this space Napoleon thing going on. And then when I bought the series on DVD, I had the option to watch it in Japanese. And I did. From the start. So I was already used to Masako Nozawa's like high-pitched Goku voice because he's a little kid at that point. And when you get used to it then, by the time he's an adult, it's really just the same voice, a little deeper. So you're just used to it. And then I learned to love and appreciate Frieza. And then once Kai rolled around, we actually finally got like a proper representation.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a dub guy. I watched all of it dubbed. I wasn't gonna watch any of it.
I mean,
I'm such a huge dub guy. You guys could fight me in the comments. I will catch me outside. I'll watch anything in dub. Deshawn was like, "Don't watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in dub," and I was like, "But it's so stupid."
I say this. I'm not a sub elitist.
Yeah.
Not every dub is created equal.
That's true.
There are good and
That's
bad
absolutely
dubs.
True.
Even now, even though the track record is a lot better now. But there are a few shows where I will like get on my knees and beg you not to watch the dub. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is one of them. That dub is god awful.
It makes me laugh. That is not what this episode's about, but it fucking cracks me up when it's me, Dio. You know, like, and I did watch that in Japanese, that same episode, and yes, they do bring it more in the Japanese.
And it is sort of a different thing. Like, it's tough to try and sell someone on like Japanese Dragon Ball if you're used to the dub. The big point of contention is Goku.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're used to Sean Schemmel, who's on a completely different like pitch.
Yep.
And you go to Masako Nozawa's like very hick-like voice because Goku in Japanese is like an equivalent to a Japanese hick. So he actually has like an accent.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's like a thing that kind of goes over your head if you've only watched the dub. But I'm used to it. the first time I had actually heard Goku in Japanese was a mistake.
Yeah?
Yes, in one of the games, there was, I wouldn't call it a glitch, but I guess it was like a special dialogue that they never dubbed.
Weird.
It was specifically the first Tenkaichi game, or Sparking, if you want to be that guy. If you have a match, because in Dragon Ball games, if you have this person versus this one, they have special dialogue at the beginning and the end of the match.
Yeah.
If you do Super Saiyan 4 Goku versus Vegeta, and Goku wins the match, for some reason, they never dubbed like his unique dialogue for the end of the match.
So it's just
like,
Japanese.
Oh, Vegeta. I'm like, what the fuck? That was the first time I had ever heard it, and I had the same reaction everyone does, like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I had the same reaction on Switch. I bought the card game they got on there, and I really enjoy it, but it's not dubbed in English. None of it is. So it's just like, all of a sudden Goku's like, ah! You're like, what? Like, you're just like, you're like, where did you come from?
It's something that you get used to and you learn to respect.
I don't think we screamed enough for a Dragon Ball episode, by the way. We should be
To be fair,
a lot more.
You're already loud enough.
I know. Exactly. I'm just saying, there should be more screaming.
Make me get the spray bottle.
Oh, Jesus. But I really do think that this is essential viewing. Like, there's no question about it. All of Dragon Ball is essential viewing for if you were going to be watching anime.
Yeah, if you generally like, it's a pretty good one-to-one if you're already a fan of, like, American comics, if you like superheroes and stuff like that. It's a pretty good, like, transition. Like, the thing that I loved about Dragon Ball growing up is just like, well, this is kind of Superman-ish, especially with, like, Goku's origin as a Saiyan and stuff like that, except there's way more punching.
Way more punching. And
so much more punching.
And that's definitely what got me into Dragon Ball, is that the fights are so damn good and barely anybody can compare, Like, there's not many people who are doing this, like, flying around superhero kicking the shit out of each other thing.
Yeah, you always, when you see a fight in a movie get even close, people usually describe it as Dragon Ball S.
Yeah.
I remember when Matrix Revolutions first came out, that big ridiculous battle at the end where they're flying around. Everyone was just like, that's like a Dragon Ball battle. That's great. And then even when Man of Steel came out, I was like, wow, this is going full on Dragon Ball. And I love it.
and I feel like, you don't get the reference if you have not seen this stuff. And I feel like it's kind of like Akira in anime, is that you should see Akira because that's going to inform you at all the times they're referencing that,
Yeah, everyone references Akira, everyone references Ghost in the Shell. Just like, if you like sci-fi, you kind of have to watch Ghost in the Shell, you kind of have to watch Akira, and you kind of have to watch Blade Runner.
Yeah, because they will be, because there will be references.
Because their fingers, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
You see it everywhere.
You see it everywhere. Cybertruck.
Cyberpunk.
Cybertruck. The Tesla truck.
Tesla. I thought you were talking about something else.
No. Tesla truck. Because that's literally a Blade Runner reference. That's why everyone was always like, it's ugly. Why is it so ugly? You're like, because Elon Musk is such a troll, he just made the truck from fucking Blade Runner, he didn't even think about, does it look good? He was just like, does it look like the movie?
I mean, I actually think it looks kind of cool.
Yeah, I do. I think it looks cool.
But it looks ridiculous and reminds me of like a PS1 model.
Exactly. It looks like it's right.
But that's a whole other topic.
That's another topic. But it's important to know these things. And I felt like watching this was an important cultural thing for me, because it was important to know what they're referencing, what this is saying, and why all shonen are like this. Because I did not understand what shonen were like.
Yeah, and I guess we should clarify, since we brought it up, just in case you don't know what the genre is. Shonen is sort of, it's not always battle manga, but it generally tends to be.
Generally.
It's a specific type of genre for battle manga most of the time, marketed at like preteen boys.
Yeah.
So they generally have like the same tropes. It's usually a young boy as a protagonist. They usually have some sort of supernatural power. In Dragon Ball case, it's ki. You have like chakra for Naruto. They have some sort of like energy source.
Yeah.
And they have something that makes them the best. It generally falls under those sort of categories. Not always. Like, I would say an exception is like Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
That technically qualifies as shonen, but you would rarely lump it in the same category.
Yeah, because it's not the keep powering up thing that mostly makes
it doesn't
shonen.
fall under like that same umbrella, but it is in that genre.
But I feel like they make it a fine art, you know? Like, and that's the reason why if you're a shonen fan, you too watch Dragon Balls. It's the fine art of shonen. They get it perfect, you know? Like, all the time you're like, that's exactly perfect. You know, like, you'll watch something and you'll be like, nice. You know, like, it's like Gohan taking out Cell at the end. It's kind of one of those things where you're like, you know?
It's so like powerful and so on such a ridiculous scale that it's like it's everything a growing boy needs. Just like, this is so ridiculous. And especially back then, there was like nothing else like it until like anime started to really take over here.
Yeah.
And you got more of it, but it's just like, compared to like other stuff you were watching on TV, you wouldn't get that same flavor. You could only get it there.
And I want it to be, it's very important to state here that Deshawn even said earlier, he had all this on VHS. Deshawn was watching this slow. Even though it took me a long time, I was able to stream these episodes all at the same time. I think it changes your viewing if you are going to watch this show all at the same time. If you are caught up and you're watching an episode week to week, you might be a little bit more frustrated.
Yeah, you had gotten into the franchise, like, even when there was like that hiatus between like you finishing Kai, not getting to the final chapters, and you were kind of gone for a little bit. But then when you came back, like, you came back at the perfect times. You have all this extra material. Like, when we were finished with GT back in our day, and it was even worse in Japan, because in Japan, like, GT ended in 96.
Yeah, so
it didn't end for us until like the mid 2000s.
Yep.
So for us, that was it. Like, they had a few more movies to dub. And that was it. Silence except for the occasional special, kept it alive through the games until Battle of Gods. Like, the franchise was essentially dormant.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of I think it's come back really strong, and I think it'll continue to be strong. You know, like,
even if there's a break in between.
Exactly. Even if there's a couple breaks, I think Super's going to continue to be a strong show. I think Super is one of the stronger shows. You know, like, I really do enjoy Super, so I'm glad to see that that's the show that's going to continue and just keep on going.
If there's one advantage to Super being more of Toei's baby than Toriyama's, is that they're not afraid to be a little more referential and not forget their roots. Because Toriyama's an old man. He forgets stuff.
Yeah.
There's minor things. Like, he works so hard that he just kind of forgets things. Like, you ever wondered why Goten doesn't have a tail in the Buu arc while Gohan did? It's because Toriyama literally forgot to draw a tail on him. He's just like, oh, yeah, the tails, those haven't come up in a while. Well, he doesn't have a tail. Or simple stuff like he mistakes Super Saiyan 2 for 3. Like, he's old.
Yeah.
He's an old man now.
It's just like, okay, whatever. But basically, to wrap it up, it's a great series. There's a reason why Deshawn loves this series. And it's something that I was kind of against at first because, like you said, it's shonen is marketed towards kids. But it's one of those things that the fights are never gonna be not entertaining to me, you know? Like,
and if you like that stuff, you're only gonna get it there.
Yeah, you're only gonna get it here. You're gonna get tons and tons of fights. So, I mean, if you're looking for something to laugh and see some good fights, all of Dragon Ball, do it up. It's time. It's time for you to watch Dragon Ball.
And plus, it'll probably be a gateway. It was a gateway for a lot of kids my age, growing up. You got into more deeper stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in the same way that, like, comic books. You might start with superhero stuff, and then you might it'll lead you into stuff like The Sandman or any of the Image indie books, stuff like that.
Exactly, and other graphic novels. So, to wrap it up, favorite Dragon Ball character that's not Goku?
That's not Goku. That's cheating.
That's cheating. Everybody loves Goku.
I don't know, Great Saiyan Man.
Great Saiyan.
Just to make you mad. No, probably maybe Future Trunks, I guess.
Future Trunks,
Future Trunks,
nice.
Maybe.
Nice. I mean, I really do love the whole arc of Piccolo. I think he's definitely one of my favorite dudes. But also everybody loves Vegeta. I feel like, Vegeta's got this weird, unique arc that nobody else has, of being like the ultimate villain.
The ultimate villain, and then later the ultimate like underdog. Just like one day I'll be the best. You never will because marketing. But one day I'll do it. One day I'll top him. You won't because this franchise is too iconic for his own good. But one day I'll do it.
Day. And and basically the new Broly movie is just fucking great. I fucking loved that movie. We just had it on while we were getting prepped for this episode, just because I needed some inspiration. And damn,
and it's gorgeous and it's so much fun.
Oh my god, it's a gorgeous movie. It's just so well animated. You're just like, dang.
I mean, because I know we were trying to wrap up, and that's a whole other discussion.
It really is.
That could be its own episode.
A whole own episode for that movie. But if you want to dive into the movies, again, the articles are on galaxyofgeek.com. There's going to be more Dragon Ball content on there too at some point. We love Dragon Ball. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue doing this. I know Z's on my best fighting games list for Switch, if you go on Galaxy and Geek. So guys, if you want more episodes, remember to hit the subscribe button, to follow us,
it's going to vary depending on what platform you're listening to this on.
Whatever you're listening to this on.
But you know where to go.
You know where to go. You don't need us pointing you the way, but we would love if you did. And also go to galaxygeek.com to check out more of our content. And thank you guys. I'm Frank.
I'm Deshawn.
And you guys have a great rest of your day.
See you next time.